There you go. So, thank you all for joining. There is a lot of talk about proper analytics and attribution, tying in Google Analytics with the Atlassian marketplace. I've had phenomenal success working with Zak, who is a subject matter expert who's not only been able to help Old Street Solutions, but a few of our clients back when we were doing marketing services. So I thought, okay, we'll just wait for someone to reconnect. So yeah, I thought it'd be really useful for the community to share some of Zak's expertise. So we'll have about 20 minutes or so going through that, I believe predominantly using Google Tag Manager. We've also got some other experts on the call, so I'd then like to open it up. Everyone can share theirs, and I want to leave enough time for Q&As at the end because I think that will probably be the most helpful. There will be people stuck on specific things that hopefully we can help one another with. So enough of me. Zak, over to you.
Right. Hi, everyone. Yeah, like Chris said, we've done this for a number of clients over the past, as well as Old Street Solutions themselves. And some of the biggest issues we've sort of had going along have always been trying to map our Google Analytics events through to Atlassian Marketplace. Primarily clients where we're sending traffic to our own domain. So in this sense, oldstreetsolutions.com. And then passing those on to Atlassian. Because of the sort of limited functionality available in the marketplace to add the GA code in, we've had multiple issues in the past trying to get the attribution working across both. So if we're buying traffic in from PPC, for example, driving it over to Atlassian, trying to stitch that together so we can sort of actually measure value through. Because obviously without having any proper setup, a lot of the conversion data you get from Atlassian will essentially come through as either referral traffic from the Old Street domain in that sense, or it'll come through as just direct traffic if you're hitting redirects or such. So yeah, there's a few areas, and it's even not in the Atlassian space, but a lot of clients I've worked with in the past, it's trying to get all these Google Analytics fundamentals in place. So I'm assuming most people here are going to be using Google Analytics, or I guess Adobe Analytics is probably the only sort of outside source. But obviously much the same issues across them. So yeah, a number of the clients, it's a case of going through and making sure all the core fundamentals are set up. Try not to teach you guys how to suck eggs on this, but there's obviously a lot of stuff around making sure your events are set up correctly, making sure you've got goals set up, and making sure, more importantly, as you start spending money and trying to campaign more, is making sure that you've got all the audiences set up across all the different channels. So making sure you've got your sort of all user groups, different cohorts of audiences, making sure you've got groups of people who have purchased, who have gone into your cart flow, have abandoned, and just anyone in particular who showed any sort of engagement in your brand or your apps that you want to then target via any of the Google apps or other mediums. So yeah, I mean, in Google Analytics, there tends to be a key set of things we go through, which is making sure we are tracking all the key button clicks on key calls to actions, where are people going, where are we losing them, but also making sure you've got all of your Google Search Console, Bing Console, Bing Webmaster Tools, any of your sort of your optimization. So if you're using Google Optimize, for example, making sure that's connected, and any Google Ads accounts also linked, just so that you're sharing audience data wherever you can and you're collecting it from day one. A number of clients we've had in the past have done an awful lot of PPC activity, got 6 months down the line and want to start retargeting. But obviously, if you've not made the audiences by that point, it's you've fallen on your face in the first hurdle. So yeah, a lot of it is making sure you've got that out of the way and you don't have that whole chat around, oh, hindsight would be great 6 months down the line. So obviously, most people are going down the route of using lots of Google PPC, but obviously a lot of our vendors are B2B, so there's a lot of activity around sort of LinkedIn paid activity. There's quite a few people testing out display channels, either Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, or any of the sort of broader ones out there, or even native display, which a number of brands I've started seeing pushing. And unless you want to end up with a website completely full of lots and lots of third-party tags, potentially slowing it down or conflicting with each other, one of the things that we've tended to recommend and have set up in the past is just making sure we have everything running through a tag manager solution of choice. I tend to go down the Google Tag Manager route, mostly because a little bit of a cheapskate there and it's free, but it's actually tends to be one of the most powerful. I've used about 4 different tag managers in the past for enterprise clients. They're all very good, but to be honest, if most of what we're doing is in Google Analytics or in the Google universe, using their own suite of tools generally plugs in a few of the gaps. So what I've done is I've worked a lot with Old Street, trying to make sure we're using Google Tag Manager to implement solutions to pass through any campaign data we get from Old Street Solutions through to Atlassian Marketplace. So in this instance, we have a lot of paid traffic coming in. So if I take PPC, for example, landing on Old Street Solutions. Any of the links pointing off to Atlassian Marketplace, obviously we lose all of that campaign data. We lose the Google Click Identifier from PPC. We lose any of the UTM tags you put onto links. So we've worked on a solution where we can store those parameters in cookies using Google Tag Manager. So if they look at more than one page on Old Street Solutions, you keep that persistent campaign identifier the whole way through, as well as if it isn't available in the URL at that time. So they've landed on the site, the first click over, then you sort of pass it through as you go. So when it hits Atlassian, it's come through with all the campaign data, which you can then stitch back. I'll share my screen quickly. I've got Old Street Solutions GA open in front of me. You can see some of the events we've got coming through. Just add a few more data to that. Make sure I share the right screen, not the one with my notes on. Where are we going? Okay, let me know, guys, if you can see that.
I can.
Great. So this is Old Street Solutions' own domain. So this is traffic coming through, primarily as being through PPC, and you can see we've got a couple of events set up on here. So one thing which isn't actually campaign related, but we've got some set up in Google Tag Manager, which is tracking every single outbound link click. So if we have articles, we have blogs, any piece of content on the site which is pointing at related articles elsewhere on the web, or just advice, we can at least capture them in these outbound link clicks and see, okay, where are these people actually going off to? So let me just drill down into that. It's going to keep spinning. Oh, the beauty of watching it load. Yeah, so you can see on these ones, these are a mixture of Marketplace Atlassian ones, which was separate to where we had campaign data tracked. So what we've done here is, so for example, we've got Facebook.com reporting for Jira, especially on lower volume websites. So you've only got 10 users a day coming in. A lot of people have looked at their reports and said, okay, we have a 90% of people exit a page on that page, or they bounce off. And you don't really have any visibility of where they're going, whether or not it's something negative around the site you're actually running, whether or not it is it's just no interest to them, so they bounced off, or whether or not you've got a link in there which is actually of interest to people and pointing off. I mean, Facebook in this sense is not the best example. But if you had an article in there which was pointing at some Reddit blog that you've pulled together, it's a great way to mine through and find out, okay, what pieces of data, what other brands are people interested in that either we can reach out to and say, oh, by the way, we're sending you a fair amount of traffic over, or looking at that article and seeing what can we incorporate on our own site to build up our own content share, to build our own keyword research and hopefully rankings down the line. It's just a great place to start, especially at scale when you're looking across the entire site to sort of work out what are people actually interested in. And people kind of get scared of adding links to their competitors in some instances, but sometimes a little bit of link sharing between them can't go amiss. So yeah, you can see on this first one as well, we've got Marketplace outbound link clicks. So this is paid activity that we've hard coded these links on. So they're pointing over to the actual Marketplace account. So if I show you here, so custom charts for Jira. So this is actually the custom charts app page on the marketplace. We're not sending traffic directly to this page, we're sending it to Old Street Solutions custom charts page. So they're landing on oldstreetsolutions.com. And then we've got some links on there to say, okay, test out the app, find out more, pointing off to marketplace. But you can see here at the top, we've actually got Google CPC coming through now as the source medium for it when we look at marketplace. So the main thing here we can see is actually we are driving people and getting some value coming from that direction. In the past, you would end up with just an awful lot of direct none here, or you just end up with primarily everything stuck in referral traffic. And you don't know whether or not that's your organic traffic, your traffic from your word of mouth, your LinkedIn, coming to Old Street Solutions and being pushed over. So what we tend to do is kind of do this en masse for every client, just to make sure we're trying to stitch together as many different people's journeys as possible. Because even with the latest releases with Atlassian, where they added in some more sort of e-commerce functionality, it still didn't give us the ability to stitch together any of that campaign data as we went across. I've also got our Google Tag Manager instance. There's a number of small little test cases in here, so apologies for naming conventions, but we've got a few different snippets here. So what we're doing is when people are landing on the core site, we're doing one of two things. We grab the UTM code, so we grab the UTM source, medium, campaign, add content. We also grab the G-CLID, so if there's any Google click identifiers from PPC, if there's any Bing identifiers as well, and we're now storing those in a first-party cookie on Old Street Solutions. And we also then store them in just a couple of other persistent cookies for use later. And essentially, whenever someone goes to click on any outbound link, so any link which is going to a URL not containing Old Street Solutions, we're then stitching that back together from the cookie. So we're just essentially reforming URLs as they're on the way out. So it's kind of it feels a bit backwards considering the world we're in, where cross-domain tracking and everything else is built into Google Analytics, but because of the limited scope we can do in the marketplace, where we can essentially just give them an ID number, it's one of the main workarounds we found, and obviously it then works for all channels, so it's not just Google working across that way. What else we've got in here as well? So we've got a number of the different bits, so you can see here. So this is where we're setting the UTM cookies, setting the mediums. We've also put into here the other pixels we need, so our LinkedIn, our Facebook pixels, everything else, but making sure we're using as few different triggers as possible, so everything's consistent. Because the amount of brands I've seen in the past where they will have a conversion, say, okay, we tell the developer we want to fire this pixel whenever someone clicks on try now, you end up with 5 different developers trying to do 5 different ways of firing a pixel. And they all count slightly differently. Some will fire it on the button press, some will fire on a submission. But at least using a tag manager solution, make sure we've got consistency everywhere. And also allows people like me, who I've got limited developer background, but I can go in and make these tweaks and scale it out for more brands. I'll stop sharing that for now. We've got on there. Yeah, we've also, because of Google Tag Manager, we did find, especially with LinkedIn, we found quite a lot of times when it was blocking the site speed. Google was doing it quite a lot in the past, but more and more it's LinkedIn, the new ones, where they're trying to build out more audience data. It just seems to cause some lag. So we have managed to sort of radically increase the site speed, if I say decrease, would be bad, as we've gone along. And yeah, so that's kind of the main bits we've done. We're just trying to stitch everything together going forwards. There's always better ways of doing it, and I'll be interested to know if you guys have come up with the same issues or tackled it in different ways, because we're trying to get to a point where we've got some clear way of doing it. And the conversations we've had around Atlassian and other vendors in the past, it seems to be a sticking point with most people, and they end up sending a lot of traffic to Atlassian Marketplace themselves, just so they've got that visibility on the attribution. Whereas obviously we can't build the audiences right from that end. So the more people we can get on our own sites, we can build the audience data and then send them off to Atlassian to then spam to death later on. Yeah, so I know I was jumping around a bit, guys, but any
No, that's brilliant. It's an American tour of Europe of quite technical stuff, but I appreciate it, Zach. So yeah, the key with that is the ability to do remarketing and lookalike audiences, which you're going to struggle with. So Zach alluded to, a lot of people end up sending people direct to the marketplace just because they can't do this Google Tag Manager, but you do miss out on a lot. So
yeah.
Hopefully that's clear. I know that was a pretty dense and intense introduction.
Yeah, it's difficult to know with you guys, obviously, how far people are in the journey of trying to stitch together and get attribution right. But well, I'd throw it all out there for now and see where people are.
Yeah, before we deep dive on questions, would anyone else like to share some sort of best practice in this space? Anything else they're using? Any other tips, tricks, or hacks? I have muted you all, so you'll have to unmute yourself.
Hi, it's Dave from ALM Works. Chris, thanks for organizing this. So we're just at the beginning of this journey. We like most vendors just send people to our pages on Atlassian Marketplace.
Yeah.
And are at the stage now where we're trying to track these things. So I can't really contribute any best practices, but I'm wondering what, if anything, you guys have done to link what you're doing, Zach, to the Atlassian attribution reports.
So you broke up a little bit on my end.
I'm just wondering what, if anything, you're doing to link what you're doing to the Atlassian attribution reports.
Yeah, so we pulled a load of data out of Atlassian reports in the past, but to be honest, the modeling we got from there came across quite differently. Where we were trying to move to a point of using more of a data-driven models in Google, they were giving us a much clearer picture of where we were getting obviously assisted conversions from multi-channels. The Atlassian ones were fairly limited in my view, to be honest, of what value I was getting out of them. What we've tried to do is get to a point where we've got ownership of all the data ourselves. We own the audiences, we similar ones and the lookalikes. We're trying to keep what we can under our control so we can then scale it out. I'm always wary about sending too many people directly to Atlassian. You're not going to see yourself because you lose the potential to remarket to them, really. And it's just, you're sort of a little bit black box. You give them a lot more scale. That's probably the pessimistic side of me, but.
Yeah, you're not wrong there. I think everyone struggled with the same thing, right? And everyone's trying to make it work via the Atlassian marketplace. But yes, we found our own hack, and I've yet to see anyone doing it better, holding hands with Atlassian. I think they're concerned about GDPR and they don't want a bunch of APIs pinging them. So for whatever reason, we've had a few new people in this community ask, when Atlassian announced last year that they would be improving the analytics on the marketplace, when do you think that'll happen? I'm like, I wouldn't wait for it. Yeah,
it's still very black box. To be honest, it's the same as what Facebook's been for a long time around the paid social side. It's their data, and over time, it's not getting more and more transparent. They're locking down what you can use. And what we're trying to do is benefit from, obviously, we want to build up our own SEO rankings for our own apps. And we also want to be able to capture people's, okay, we've got a white paper on this. We can get some email addresses like newsletters. And there's just no way really of getting them back to your own site once they've been to the marketplace. And you've just got a lot less flexibility there.
And just quickly building on that, we do a lot less gated content than most people, than I used to do, precisely because our remarketing is so good at this point. I don't think we need it. So I don't need someone to give me the same email address from 15 years ago that they always use for spam, and then they just ignore. I think we've all got a few of those emails now. I'd much rather have remarketing set up properly, and then when it's the right time, right place.
We set up the remarketing audiences about a year ago using this method for Old Street. Only a month or so ago, we started doing a lot more activity using some of the more advanced Google expansions. So we use a lot of lookalikes, we use some more Google expansions, some more activity around sort of discovery. And yeah, we've seen great results from that, just trying to get different messages through. And obviously a lot of us have multiple apps. And we can then hit the same audience with, okay, they showed interest in this, they're probably interested in something else, which we've got under our remit. It just allows us to sort of build that story up and try to segment it as we go. But yeah, we just lose that visibility otherwise.
Thank you, Zach. So yeah, let's open it up. What do people have problems with? What would people like to deep dive more on?
Just know what the general challenges are. This is obviously one we've hit multiple times. Everyone's problem free.
So I'll jump in with another quick question. What, if anything, are you doing to integrate Atlassian Marketplace page views for your products into your Google Analytics dashboard?
Yeah, so we've got currently we have an old street Google profile set up, and we've then also got separate profiles and views for all of the different Atlassian apps, and we're trying to then build that. We're building audiences out of that macro view anyway, so we're trying to use the page view data from there to say, okay, these people have been to our core domain. They've also looked at app 1 of ours. They've also looked at app 2, so they can go into a nice little cohort and be used later on. It's just a matter of making sure it's segmented right in Google Analytics, so you haven't got mixed host names in the same place, and where you can, using sort of conversion linkers, make sure the cross domains going across. The issue with that is most of the cross domain stuff in Google Analytics only works one way because we can only configure it one way with the Atlassian limitations.
Yeah, that's what we're struggling with now. Is we do see a lot of repeat counting across the segments.
Yeah. And then the other thing that you can do is track people that click try now and buy now. I think that's a really important conversion metric for obvious reasons.
Yeah, so I mean, on the duplication front, what we don't tend to see many people coming from Atlassian Marketplace back to us. So obviously, by making sure you've got this configured where you're passing any campaign data through from your core domain into Atlassian Marketplace and making sure you're stitching everything together using the conversion linkers, the majority of your audience is going to benefit from that conversion linking across. It's just going to be that if they come back the other direction, you lose that visibility. So it should cover the majority of what you're looking for there. Because obviously you can stitch the user going one way, because you're essentially saying in your own report to stitch together this host name and this host name. But yeah.
But part of our solution there has been we don't have many links on our Atlassian Marketplace listing to our website. It'll be to our documentation pages, which will be hosted on Confluence. So it doesn't solve the problem, but at least it's counted in a separate place. And as you can understand, like the sort of people going to your documentation are a different audience to the sort of people who see a post on LinkedIn, see an ad on Google, click on it, and then go to your website, and then go to the Atlassian Marketplace. It's further up the funnel.
Yeah.
Just out of curiosity, what sorts of page view volumes are you seeing on Marketplace versus in your own site? You don't have to share the actual numbers.
Happy to share it all. I'm an open box, but yeah, it's been interesting. I was asking actually in the Slack channel for vendors. A couple of months ago, we were watching website views going up. We were watching conversions going up, but we weren't watching Atlassian Marketplace page views going up, even though like sales were all like hockey sticking up. It was just really odd that for a while, Marketplace visitors to those different pages weren't going up. And some of the other vendors pointed out, well, there's a few different ways people can buy, right? And I think especially for bigger customers, those people don't go on the Atlassian Marketplace and click buy now. They'll just call up their vendor, their service solution partner, and say, yeah, but buy me this thing. So and make sure that it's done that way. So I guess that kind of answered your question. Like I'd be interested to open up to other people, because it's something I've noticed that I can make every metric go up, but it doesn't necessarily have immediate feedback on the number of people visiting our Atlassian Marketplace listings. Has anyone else found that, or am I just going crazy?
No, we've had that as well, where sometimes we'll see some jump and we're struggling to figure out where it's coming from. And yeah, exactly what you described, where it's coming through, other solution partners. Sometimes, like I don't know how concrete this is, but how much data we actually get if they buy via the marketplace on cloud. Like
Yeah, they can buy from within Jira, right? If they click.
Exactly, yeah. And so I don't think that that's counted in what we're tracking. And so we see a lot of that situation as well. So yeah, we don't rely too heavily on the numbers being all that accurate from what we get from the marketplace directly.
Yeah, just attribution in general is a bit of a black box. This isn't a unique to Atlassian marketplace problem. The big thing is we've noticed like our emails, phenomenal open rates. And every time we send a good mail blast, we get an uptick in visitors to our website, but very few click on the link in the website. It's data security bad practice, right? So we just watch a lot more people like direct, or you know, the lazy man's directly search for it in Google, and that's why SEO is so important when you click on the link there.
Yeah, and I mean on that, there's a lot of people obviously where we've got quite condensed pages, lots of content on a single app on our own sites, and a lot of people not just in this space get sort of stuck in the mud with either, oh, we've got a very high exit rate on here or a very high bounce rate. But obviously they could spend 5 minutes on that page and read all the material and it's perfect for them. They're going to come back later and leave, and they bounce the same as a person who's been on there for 1 second. So we've got a lot of additional tracking running at the moment around whether or not they've looked down the page. There's some more basic scroll tracking on there and also timer counts as well. Just so you can then segment those audiences of actually, these are people who've bounced, who've been on the page for less than 10 seconds, say, because those are not the people we're after. If they've been on the page and bounced, but they spent a minute on there, they're probably in the right sort of area of what we're looking for, and we can sort of try to push them something else and see what works. But yeah, just a couple of metrics just to keep an eye out on if you've not into the analytics front.
So just quickly, show of hands. I'll try the gallery view. Yeah, hands up, anyone that's currently using Google Tag Manager. Okay, and then I suppose the rest of you are using something else, or you're about to start using Google Tag Manager? What's the plan?
We're about to start.
Okay, Zak, are there any like resources you'd recommend?
To be honest, Google Tag, there is, let me find the blokes page, because there is a guy who is like the Google Tag Manager guru who I tend to have bookmarked. I'll put his link in the chat in a sec.
Superb. Yeah, I didn't expect us to solve all the world's problems on this call. So if we keep the conversation going and maybe have a catch up in a couple of weeks, and then people can have some more questions and say where they're struggling, and we can do another session.
Here we go, chat. Just a quick one for everyone to look at. That tends to have a lot of workarounds and hacks. If anyone's looked at it, they've probably stumbled across him.
Thank you very much, Zak. Now, does anyone have any like specific questions, problems they're having, something they're pulling hair out of over?
I have a question. My name is Jonas. I'm the marketing manager at Refined, and I'm just wondering how you guys are dealing with, because like we're also in the initial stage of setting up tracking and also working a lot with primarily search ads, but we're tracking everything, of course, on the marketplace up to the trial, the click on try, and then we are tracking. The actual conversion in our BI tool, so with the Atlassian Attribution. But since we lose like what like actual things are like, or who actually buys the product, that's the problem. So like we can track everything that they click on try, but how do you guys what are your thoughts about like who are really buying the product? Because even though now you can see that some people are converting directly, but I don't know, is it because it's not like you're buying a pair of shoes here? So it's just like how are you dealing with that? Because I feel that, so the real thing is that I don't know if some things are working, because I don't know if the people who are clicking on the ad actually are purchasing the product.
So Zak, if you talk about the tracking it through conversion at various stages, and I'll go to the point about non-anonymous customer tracking through tools such as HubSpot and the like. Okay.
Yeah, because I mean, there's obviously in Google Analytics, you've got a lot of the goal flow past conversion flow, where you can at least see, okay, they went from this channel to this channel, and obviously with a lot of our products, it's not exactly a quick purchase. Like you said, it can be a extended period of time. So there's obviously the time lag reports in there to try and get a picture of. I guess the issue comes when it's like myself looking at the product, but I'm actually not the purchaser. It is a procurement department or someone in IT that actually picks that one up. I mean, there is the only way around it really, and there's probably a couple of approaches, is some of these more econometric attribution tools. So it takes in that broader play, but you're talking an awful lot of money to find out a very small piece of data. As well as probably just where you can, capturing some, so that's in the world of working from home, it's not as helpful, but when people are back in the offices, the ISP data. So obviously we can get some data in Google Analytics around their host names or some of the details around what network they're coming in on. And the number of times, if it's a large business, that the network comes through clearly as IBM, you can then start to actually look at, okay, we've now got signups under these email addresses, so you could stitch that back, but it is quite a manual workaround. I don't think there's any clean-cut way if they're not under the same either Google login or cookie or session.
No, it's proved incredibly hard. So I've been desperate to get this information, as you can appreciate when you're looking at bigger and bigger customers and you're spending all this amount on money. The dream that all these software companies sell you is account-based marketing, right? Target, know who's converting, see it happen in real time. Unfortunately, no one that I've met has been able to achieve it. If they have, they're keeping it a secret. I think the obvious thing is tools such as Hubspot. Is very good at giving you, for relatively cheap, a good indication of which companies are going on your site. Obviously, as Zak alluded to, it's not quite as good as it now that people are working from home and not from the office IP. A little warning notice, if you haven't played around with such tools, is that you will get a lot of internet companies. That will be a false flag. So just because a telecom company checks out your website, it's normally just the ISP provider. I've tried Yandex, I think it is, which is the Russian equivalent. They are less concerned about GDPR if you're looking to go black hat with it. However, we found that they were slowing down our page with just the volume of data they were crawling. Brilliant, because it's sort of the equivalent to Hotjar. It's giving you a heat map for how people are using your website, which is really good feedback, I think, and it's worth turning on for a bit just to see whether your website's been well received, people are checking out the things you'd like. But ultimately, we turned it off because now we're so search engine optimization focused, and page loading speed became my #1 priority. So. Are there any more questions specifically on Google Tag, or shall I hand over to maybe Natalie to talk a little bit about what's possible with HubSpot?
I did just note one thing down. Jonas, you mentioned about how much you're pushing through search ads. Is PPC the majority of what people's paid activity is? And what's the general consensus? Do you use manual CPC, or are you using any of the sort of target strategies? So like target CPA, for example.
I would say we use a little bit of both.
And I'm assuming on the target CPA front, you're just doing it to people clicking on try now, buy now.
Yeah.
So there's one note on that, and I come from a job board background where we had massive volumes of data coming through. And what I found very different to a world where it's smaller, much niche apps, and obviously less conversion data, is that the Google algorithms, they don't handle it very well. They're getting better at it all the time, but if you end up with, say, 100 people landing on a page, one person clicks on try now, the best computer in the world is still going to struggle to work out why that one person is better than the 99 other people. So where you can, I would try to set up other markers further up the journey. So if you create some segments in Google Analytics to say, okay, people who actually land on the site, scroll most of the way down the page and look at this video, for example, they have a much higher propensity to convert than people who don't. Maybe go after people who do that. And so you're feeding the system with as much detail as you can. And you'll get to a point where you work out, okay, we're getting a bit of traction, we've got some data coming through, maybe we'll move down and try and get things further and further down to obviously that conversion point at the end that you want. But the amount of times in the past that I've seen Google will either completely limit the spend because it's not seeing the conversions coming through, but if it all of a sudden sees 2 come through in one day, it will just start pushing the bids higher and higher. And it will modify to that audience, but it could just be luck that that's the right person at that time. And when you're looking over a 30-day window, and obviously you said the conversion lag can be excessive, you might end up turning things off before it actually gets a chance to work down the line. So I would try to map out at what point you see value from a customer and go after that, not necessarily the end.
Yeah, and likewise, we found, because I always wanted the dream of proper analytics and attribution tracking, and we haven't quite reached there. And this is often the case with these big data platforms. Done well and with a bit of trial and error, you sort of let it do its own thing. And I don't think anyone at Google could tell me why we started having massive success with CPC, but we've just experimented enough that after the last event, that increased search volume, which then was finding the right people who were converting, which then increased our quality score, which lowered our cost per click, which meant then we had 20 times the number of visitors coming through for a very low cost per click. And it was only because we had these experiments set up that we were able to be in the position to take advantage of that.
Yeah, and it got us to a point where we had enough conversions coming and we could switch over to a strategy and volume out that way.
Yeah, I've seen a few hacks with that with social where you start off using one bid strategy, and then as soon as you start having success, you can change to, so LinkedIn was where I first learned this. You start paying per click, and then if you have above 5% conversion rate from viewing the post to clicking it, then you switch to cost per million viewers, because you know that enough people will click on it that'll make that a more efficient strategy. The dream of LinkedIn is that you can do exactly what a few of you have talked about: target a company, advertise to a company, sell specifically to that in an account-based marketing way. But we've tried it so many times, and I just don't think our products are expensive enough to justify LinkedIn's cost.
No. I always do want to see it work, but trying to get the right audience built is obviously in Bing now you can use LinkedIn data, so it has data.
So Bing, obviously owned by Microsoft, LinkedIn owned by Microsoft. I know people don't rate Bing, but DuckDuckGo and Ecosia are quite well used by some people. So if those link together, the hope is that that will connect the dots enough to be valuable.
And it gives you the ability to then modify up for people who are in certain job functions, certain sectors. And it might be that you can try to drill things down and get more of a procurement side on AT.
But as it's come up, I think it's a really interesting question. I have given Natalie no warning whatsoever that I was going to do this, but it seems appropriate as she's the subject matter expert. So same as Zak for analytics, we started working with Natalie and been enormously impressed by her knowledge of Hubspot and best practice around that. So maybe if you could just give an introduction to the HubSpot best practice and how it can help people who are looking to target specific accounts.
Thanks. Can you guys hear me? Because actually I was having issues with my mic earlier. Wonderful. It's the first time it's worked all day, so we're lucky. So hi everybody, I'm Natalie, I'm Director of Niam Marketing. Yeah, I've been working with HubSpot for quite a while now, sort of trying problem solving. Particularly we've been working a lot around this idea of converting freemium to premium users, quite a lot using HubSpot. We've actually ended up building sort of the information from SQL databases that sort of our developers have got, pushing that into HubSpot, which means we can see at what point people are signing up, or people are downloading, and take those details. And then we're actually segmenting audiences based on actions in app on HubSpot. So I don't know how familiar people are with HubSpot, but it's a CRM system that has CRM, marketing, sales attachments to it. I focus my attention around sort of the marketing side. We use it, one, for tracking signups of downloads, then we segment them to then translate them into active users, and then we can actually run email marketing campaigns to those people based on the actions they take in app. So it's kind of like doing them both sides. Prior to that, LinkedIn's very useful for your gated content. The primary goal is to get people to enter their emails, to fill out forms so they can download content as much as possible. And we put lead scoring behind that. So depending on how many different pieces or how many articles people have looked at, how many of your HubSpot landing pages people have looked at, you can then obviously offer them more and more information depending on if they're in like the discovery or the consideration or, you know, ready to buy journey. Prior to that, we're actually doing quite a lot of work at the minute with really tracking social media clicks on HubSpot. HubSpot are getting more advanced with their social media integrations in terms of integrations to Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook. We are using lead gen forms a lot on Facebook and LinkedIn. So then we can, that data from lead gen form automatically comes straight into HubSpot. So then we resegment them and market to them that way. And we can also build audiences within HubSpot now, so we can retarget with traffic ads as well. So I think, you know, HubSpot, the ecosystem is definitely growing. There's definitely more you can do with it. There's lots of native integrations. If you've got WordPress, it's great for native integrations. Not so great with any other CMS systems. You're looking more at Zaps for those. I know Chris and I chatted a little while ago about integrations with Wix, which isn't...
I've had a nightmare year just trying to get it to work and been arguing with both Wix and HubSpot customer support. And after, I think, 3 months, they were like, oh yeah, actually, no, it's not possible.
Yeah. I have another client who's done the same thing and I've said, just don't do it.
Yeah. So, and actually we've sort of got to that point where I've been exploring all the possibilities of HubSpot, which is amazing. Of course, there are different levels that you can purchase to get different amounts of amazingness with it. There is a lot you can do on the free platform. So if anyone is actually interested in just having a chat with me about like what you can actually do completely for free on HubSpot, I'm happy to chat to anybody about that if you want to connect with me after the call. We're actually going into, I'm sort of exploring now how we link up the data from the stuff we're pulling in from Google Tag Manager into the stuff that we've got with HubSpot. We haven't quite figured that out yet. So I'd love to, of course, share those findings with everybody once we have maybe figured out some more stuff around that.
Yeah, I haven't quite connected you and Zach, but that should happen. So,
and then we can share knowledge and hopefully together share knowledge with everybody to make it easier for everybody. But I suppose key takeaways are lead gen forms are performing really well in social media. For
is that native LinkedIn lead gen forms?
Yeah, and Facebook. The HubSpot integrates with both of those now, and actually launched just a couple of weeks ago. They're now building user ad journeys. So they've actually built in, so you can create a Facebook awareness campaign, a Facebook consideration campaign, and a Facebook conversion campaign, and run them simultaneously, building the audiences within HubSpot itself and remarketing to those people based on managing it all from one platform on LinkedIn. So you don't have to go into Facebook Business Manager or LinkedIn Manager. However, I would say there are limitations with what you can do on HubSpot in terms of the granularity of creating audiences. So what I tend to do is set them up on HubSpot, then I go deep into the platforms themselves. So Facebook, Google, LinkedIn, and then actually work directly from there. Nice thing about HubSpot though, is because you can integrate your Google, your LinkedIn, your Facebook, your Twitter, whatever. Bing, I don't think they have yet. But what's nice is that you can see your spend and then how many new contacts are created as a result of those advertisements. So it's a nice place for return on investment tracking, and they are improving their reporting to non-technical people. So you can actually start creating bespoke reports for very specific things related to your business, and they build the graphs for you, which is nice. I think that's a whirlwind.
Wow, that was a whirlwind data dump.
I wasn't prepared. Apologies.
Well, it didn't show, so well done. So, yeah, you know, some of you have been a bit quiet. I'd really like to open up if anyone has any questions, or yeah, we don't need to answer it now, but just something to think about, and then we can hopefully revisit when we do one of these sessions in a couple of weeks' time. Anything else someone would like to deep dive on as a topic in a couple of weeks? So I know that one of these talks is done once a month in a Pacific time zone. So I think hopefully I'll do this again once a month so that, yeah, people on the Atlantic have a more convenient time. Okay, Dave, thank you very much. Thanks for joining. So yeah, anything else from anyone else?
Well, I have a question. In the beginning of the chat, you said that you've had a great success with remarketing or retargeting of customers, and what I'm wondering is, like, what kind of, in your experience, like what kind of remarketing and retargeting has worked the best? Like, who are you retargeting? Who are you remarketing to? And where are you sending them?
Yeah, it's a good point. I'll have a shallow answer, and then hopefully Zak can correct me where I'm wrong. So we do well with people that have visited our site more than once. Like for me, that's clear intent. To be honest though, we do all of the above. So we've tried very, very segmented audiences, and what we end up doing is then just doing different ad groups to different groups. And as I say, the big one was the Atlassian event last week, the team tour. Because of that spike in search volume, our ads were shown to more people. And not only do we do retargeting, but we do lookalike audience. So that gets smarter and smarter. So we've tried to be very segmented and very specific. Only people that have seen only this app within the last 30 days. But as Zak will probably tell you in the end, the big audience, and even letting Google expand the audience sometimes, has been where we've been most successful.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the search terms we're going after are very niche. There's not a lot of search volume, and if you've searched it once, you're probably not going to search it again. So a lot of the time it's bringing those audiences and remarketing them via some display channels. So Google Discovery ads at the moment has been doing quite well. Gmail ads, anywhere where we can sort of show some visibility. So if you've got any sort of a decent graphic medium, so video, for example, we've had great success remarketing people from that side. When we've done prospecting with those channels in the past, it's not worked so well because it's just a bit too broad and a lot of people just aren't interested. So it's just trying to test out, okay, we know that they've showed solid intent by typing in a term which is very niche for the industry. So actually remarketing those with some visual stuff and some more graphics around, okay, this is what the app is, this is how it looks, this is what
that's what, in terms of the content, I'll say that display works very well, especially with banner blindness. People that we all ignore ads, right? But not just display. I think it always confuses me when people spend a lot on graphic designers to do an artist impression of what your app should look like. I think you should just invest in making your app look good and then show a screenshot of it, and then the people will be like, oh, that looks good, that's what I want. So I'd really recommend display ads because people will ignore an ad that's on the side in the banner, but if it's an image of what they can clearly see is Jira, that will trigger in them like what they're looking for, and that we found not only converts well, but sort of it just spikes massively. And again, I love the cumulative snowball effect of, because more people convert, your price per click gets cheaper, your budget goes further. So and
we're seeing a lot of potential out of it as well, not from just, okay, we're getting nice CPMs, we're getting lots of people to look at it, we're actually getting an awful lot of people clicking and then taking action when they land on the site. What we found obviously with the prospecting side is you can tend to get some very nice low CPMs. You get a lot of like visibility and branding, etc. But if they're not actually converting, they're probably not the right people for you. So it's just trying to find that medium. I mean, what you said about who we're actually going after, we've got some segments, sort of qualified audiences. So we've done our own job of marking, okay, if they've looked at more than 2 pages, or they've scrolled down more than half the page on a mobile device where we get a lot less interaction, and just trying to blend those audiences to find out who are the right ones to go after. And it's just a case of, okay, this person has come in on a search ad, we've showed them this display, they've still not converted, but they've obviously clicked on a display ad, so they are interested. Maybe it's a different app they want, and just trying to segment them nicely as they go down the road.
Another quick warning, something that we've learned working with Zak, is you have to be careful not to make sure your own ads are competing with each other, and Google really will let you bid against yourself and drive your own price up. So.
Google always takes the highest bid on that front, which is painful. And especially, I mean, it's easy enough to see it in Google Ads. You'll see it in Facebook quite quickly because you can obviously see some reports around saturation and overlap. But yeah, you'll find it's quite clear if you turn on one of your other ad groups when you've got such a finite audience pool and such low search volume, but you're just going to appear everywhere.
So we've started rotating, like as a sprint. This month we will advertise this app, because otherwise we just compete with ourselves. I think we probably spend more than Atlassian on ad budget, I'm pretty sure, at the moment. So the only competitor I've got in this space so far is myself.
But if we all did it, they'd never appear.
Wow. Okay. I feel like I've just ran a marathon. That was intense. You guys are... So please, let's keep the conversation going. If you have any questions, we always have the vendor Slack room. And yes, I will set up another one of these in a month's time. I'd like everyone to sort of do their homework and report back on what they've learned, what they've updated, how it's going, and any questions they have, having tried some of these. And really appreciate you all for attending. I think this is really good for the community to just share.
Thank you for putting this together.
Yeah, absolute pleasure. Thanks for
you.
joining.
Yeah, thanks for the insight, guys.
Cheers. Thanks, guys.
Cheers all. Take care.
Bye.